So you're the founder of the London office for Wilson Sonsini, and I know you've got colleagues that have their education, their law certifications from different countries. How do you find it's to how do you and how does Wilson Sonsini manage the cultural differences in your employee group on one side of the pond and the other? So some of the things like making your policies fair or equitable, and I'm sure you've got quite a few Americans working for you in London and vice versa. So what are some of the things taking off your I'm advising founders, but as a business owner and manager, a people manager, how do you manage to keep the cultural balance on both sides of the ocean?
So I'll answer that both in sort of a micro, which is me personally or me individually, and then maybe a macro, which is the office within the overall firm. On an individual basis, I spent many years as an American, as a New York expat, technically New Jersey for all you New Yorkers out there.
Right.
Bridge and tunnel, as they say.
Oh gosh, no, I understand.
But many years spending time getting to understand especially the UK market, the UK culture. I did naturalize almost 2 years ago now, so I am officially both a Brit and an American. Right. But I think what that means is that I've tried to go to great lengths to understand how the other side lives, the other half lives, as they say, right? And so I try to constantly be putting myself in the shoes of the other side to understand how different dynamics, how different discussions, how words may be interpreted differently from the other side of the Atlantic. I try to keep in my mind that football and football mean different things simultaneously.
Right.
And switch back and forth constantly. And it took a long time to get to that point, and it'll always be a journey. I'm not going to say that I always get it right, but I have spent a lot of time and spent a lot of time thinking through how can I be a better translator for the two sides of the Atlantic, right? When I talk to American investors who are looking at UK companies, I feel that I can convey to them what the company is thinking, having spent a lot of time here, and vice versa, right? When I'm talking to a UK company, I can explain, look, this is the perspective you might be used to when building a business in the UK, or talking to investors in the UK, or let's say selling to a UK buyer, but this is the way that Americans are going to view it, and hopefully describing it in a way that will resonate.
Right.
So on a personal level, that's it. That's what I do is sort of maintain, as you can see by my background, both literally and figuratively.
Yes, I do. You know what? It's a background, but it's there. It sort of reflects your philosophy, which is I'm going to try and understand the other and make things work as well as possible. So, and you wanted to add something from the Wilson Sonsini perspective?
Yeah. And on a macro level, I think we are engaged in quite the experiment, which is that we have about roughly half the office are expat Americans in London, and half the office are native British, native English solicitors. And we run it quite intentionally as a blended UK-US team. That really is what we like to think is our USP, right? Is that we're offering a blended British American team in London to help companies through that US life cycle, as opposed to a London office that is all locally hired and an American office that is all locally hired, which is fine. But when our goal is specifically to translate, we find that we can be effective translators when we have kind of everybody together under one roof. Now that comes with its challenges, right? But I also do find that the relationship with the U.S. offices is strong and robust and enduring because so many of us came from the U.S. offices.
Right.
Right.
So it's easy for you to translate for your colleagues.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Is that because what we have in London is partially from London and partially from the U.S., it allows us to operate as an integrated whole, both internally and across the Atlantic in a fairly unique way.
Can you share with us some of the things that are different culturally, work culture-wise, either based in the countries where you've been, because our viewers are going to be, or our listeners are going to be expanding into the U.S. and are going to be dealing with employees for the first time. So can you give us some insight about what it's like to be a U.S. employee or a U.K. employee?
Sure. I mean, I think, this is going to depend largely on the actual company. I think that company culture can vary widely, even within different countries. So in other words, two companies in the US could have vastly different cultures, and two companies in the UK could have vastly different cultures. And so I think that's really important to understand, is that, especially as a business owner, is that you create a culture that aligns with, what it is that you're after. I think generally speaking, probably the biggest differences are going to be some of the more legal differences. Things like holiday time, being mandated in Europe versus not required at all in the U.S. Maternity leave being, a year in the U.K. and not at all in the U.S. And I do think that if going from the UK to the US, especially for an employee, they're going to expect that they're, perhaps going to be afforded some of those benefits that they're used to from the UK. And I think you won't, that wouldn't be the norm in the US. Obviously, vacation time is not very much in the U.S.
Right.
So those are things that I would say. I think compensation, depending on, again, where you are, what industry you're in, is going to vary. For instance, I think, and industry is huge on this, but I do think that salaries generally are lower in the UK than in the US, pretty much anywhere. So that's something I think that is a little bit of an eye opener. And as far as work-life balance is concerned, which is what is always a hot topic for everyone, again, I think this is company culture, isn't it? So, I've worked in both places and in different companies that have very different views on this. And I think generally speaking, work-life balance is probably better in the UK and in Europe. Again, industry specific, but I think generally speaking, there is a bit of more of a focus on work-life balance in the UK than in the US. I don't know that. I think that's a good thing, but for someone going to the US, that's not going to be great for them.
Right.
But again, I think that any company can establish their own parameters about what's important to them.
Right. Very good point, because there is the culture, and you've tapped into some of the not necessarily stereotypes, but the things people sort of are aware of, like, oh, you don't get much leave. And we've tried at Foothold America to meld the two. So bringing the salaries up in the UK, expanding the amount of leave in the US. And it was really hard for us, for the American employees working in the US to take the leave. We'd come up on the end of the year and we're going, hey, you've got 5 weeks of leave here. And they're like, I don't know what to do with it. So it does take a while, but I think you're absolutely right. It's the culture of the organization. And that ends up being something that's quite important for our clients that are based in the UK or elsewhere, is to try and bring that over there. So I think what you're saying is if you're a US employee and you're considering working for a company based elsewhere, you can't really make assumptions. It's going to be about the culture of that company, and it could be very similar to the US or have a very European feel to it.
And vice versa. Absolutely. I think that's important to keep in mind. I think culturally, as far as just day-to-day interactions, I think that there is a cultural difference. Obviously I'm American, I live in the UK. There is a cultural difference. And I think, some people really adapt and are able to sort of fit in with a different culture. And some people will really struggle. I think it's just being aware that even though we speak the same language between the US and the UK, there is a lot of, cultural differences, generally speaking, even just in language. So I think just being aware and perceptive, I think anyone can thrive in either place.
You're used to working with US, UK, or internationally various teams. So how does Blick manage to meld the work cultures and worker expectations? You touched on that a little bit earlier when it comes to hiring employees, but what does Blick do that you think works especially well?
Yeah, so I think COVID accelerated an awful lot of things in lots of different places. For the terrible time it really accelerated the way that we think about working. And we have this thing called our brighter working policy that really is a hybrid approach to where we do work, where we add value, and when. The idea of 9 to 5 in the office in London, one, doesn't work anymore in the modern world, but two, for an international client base, doesn't really work either, because if we have clients in California, the window of crossover time is so small. Right. The other thing is, our team we have 100 people in our US UK team who have, various different, stages of life. Some of them have young children. Some of them have recently moved to London, having finished university. Some of them have grown up children. Basically, there are all sorts of different commands on your time. There are different things that you need to plan around. And so having a real flexible approach, for instance, I will take my son to nursery in the morning, I will work during the day, it will finish at 5, we'll have bedtime, bath time, and then actually after that, I'll log on to send some emails and prepare some proposals. And being able to do that just means that I can add the most value at the time that works best for me. And actually, we've seen an awful lot of our team really enjoy that benefit. There are downsides, there are consequences to that. In the past, we maybe have taken for granted that a lot of, tax is difficult, it's complex, it takes a long time to learn. And a lot of that education came through osmosis. Just being sat around people in the office meant that you overheard, you pieced things together, you're able to ask questions. And so being able to kind of digitally replicate that has been something that we've been working on. But we have a number of ways that we do this now, a number of things that we use and different tools that can help us to do it. But I think that's the way that we do that. The other thing is, I think we have a number of Americans that work in our team, but for the most part, we're a team of British people. But we work with clients who are either Americans living in the UK or British companies expanding into the US who are much more connected with US culture. So actually, it makes us sit back and think, oh, why is the IRS not answering the phone on Monday? Well, because it's Veterans Day, it's a holiday in the US. Right. Why are none of our clients replying to us on the, Thursday in November? It's because it's Thanksgiving. And actually it starts to, one, open your eyes and your mind to what's going on in your client's life, because they're real people and not just numbers on a form. But two, it opens your broader mind to, well, there are all sorts of different cultures and people and things going on that makes us connect with each other, makes us connect with wider clients. It's a good jumping off point to start to think about people in the way that we all interact with each other. It's really exciting expanding into the US if you're a business owner or you're leading a business. And that's great. You want advisors and people around you who can help, help to keep that enthusiasm up, to help to fan those flames. But what you want to do is you want to take the right advice at the right time. So talk to people, talk to everybody, talk to talk to our team, talk to our competitors, talk to everybody, so you have a good understanding of what the lay of the land is, and then you can pick the right choice, the right option, and make the right first steps. It's much easier to take a breath and figure out the right option now than it is to rush into something and have to fix it further down the line. And more importantly, because of the way the US system works, it can be much more costly to do it that way. So take a second, speak to everybody, put a plan together, and then find somebody who can help you to run that plan. That's how we try and be with our clients, is we try and help them to be successful at doing what they do, and we'll look after the tech side.
Excellent. It's so brilliant. It seems almost fundamental, but it's amazing how busy we get and we just kind of start taking actions without taking a breath to make sure we've done our research. So I think the message is very clear from you. It makes so much sense. It mirrors in a lot of ways exactly what the conversations we have with our clients around people operations. So this has been fantastic. And yes, I can talk about tax every day of the week from my layperson perspective, because it's so critical to get that right. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You have employees in both the US and in France, and probably people from different cultures working in different places. So how does Expand CPA, how do you and your partners manage the differences in work culture and time off and things like that?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's something we experience every day. So we have basically 3 offices. One office in Paris, the main office. We have one office in Miami and one office in Tel Aviv in Israel.
Right.
We have people like in each country, approximately 40 employees by the end of the year. And effectively, we have employees coming from different culture, different background, different mentality. I have to say that it's a lot of fun because we accept any culture at the office. The first thing we're doing to make sure that everything is fine. We're having a great onboarding. So any new employee is introduced to our team. We have a different way of talking. Like you have a WhatsApp group, we have a Teams. We're using Slack.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we, if for example, if an employee from Miami is working on a file, it doesn't mean that he's only going to work with people from his office in Miami. He can work with people from Paris and people from Tel Aviv. So there is always interaction, and we're making sure to listen every single human, like every single voice. Obviously, in France we like that everything is structured, everything is clear. Sometimes when you're working with people in Israel, they want like making more familiar and more fast, let's say.
Okay.
So we accept everything, and people like in the teams know that it's the way we're working. So it's generally like greatly accepted by everyone. And we're having like offsite meetings 1 or twice a year.
Great.
Every time we're trying to visit a new office with all the teams. So we went to the office in Tel Aviv last year. We went to the office in Paris this year, and we went like in Normandy for a few days, like all the teams. So everyone get to know each other, and to see each other, because like we having like teams meetings every day, on video meetings everywhere, but it's not replacing the human interaction.
It's true. Yeah, for sure. That's true. We the same thing where we've had some employees were working together for a year before they even met each other, and then it just changes a little bit, because even though it's nice to have these kinds of meetings and recordings and things like that, nothing can substitute for face-to-face. So what that means, Benjamin, is I'm going to come up to Paris sometime and see you. So I'm fairly close, but down at the southern part of the country. So I'd love to come see you in Paris.
Welcome. More than welcome.
Great. So that is all of our questions, but is there anything else you would like to add for our listeners to better understand the work that you do, or things that they should keep in mind when expanding to the US?
Yeah, maybe just one thing. Maybe just to list the common mistakes, few mistakes that entrepreneurs making when they move to the US, and it's a mistake that we see all over the time.
Oh yes, please.
we spoke about the incorporation of a business in the US, so that's very important that to be aware like of the what type of entity you're going to open in the US. Just not going online and opening an LLC without knowing the tax consequence. In the US, there is a common mistakes also that I'm seeing all the time because we don't have that in France. In France, we have France and that's it. In the US, we have the federal and the state. It's two different things. So it's not because you're paying your tax at the federal level that you pay your tax at the state level. That's very important mistakes. One more thing is the transfer pricing policy. I know that for every entrepreneur, it's painful because it's a lot of money when you're going to hire like someone to work on the transfer pricing policy, but it's very important. In case of control, it's the first thing that the tax authority in France or in the US are going to look into it. So it's very important to have a transfer pricing policy very clear and defined between France and the US. What else can I say? Payroll obligation. It's important to respect all the payroll obligation both in France and in the US. Type of mistake that usually like I'm seeing for my clients that we helping. You know, they forget to pay the state tax. They don't have a transfer pricing policy established and stuff like that. So it's very important that you look into it. And obviously my firm is trying to help you in every single step. So if you have any questions or any doubt on any tax advice you need when you expanding in the US, you don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to assist you all down the way.
Oh, that's excellent. It's so true about transfer pricing because you have to be thinking, how are we working together? And you sometimes work across borders, as you mentioned, with your team, and you also have to think about the authorities in each country and how they will view it. And that was a surprise to me that we spent a lot of time on the transfer pricing, and we review it every year to kind of go, is this still true? Are we still running or operating in the same way that we were last year? What has changed? So that's great advice to make sure you pay attention to your transfer pricing. You as a manager, you're heading up the UK office, how you work with your remote and office employees where they may come from the US, they may have different cultures, and how do you meld those different cultural expectations of the Ellis Porter team?
That's a really great question, and the reality is culture really is a huge part of Ellis Porter, and it's not just a tagline that we say. We really believe it, and it comes from the top down. So the two founding partners, Mark and Shaju, really truly believe in having a great culture and work environment, and that stemmed from when I first joined Ellis Porter. We were 8 people. We're now broaching 250 employees. That culture has remained exactly the same as we've gone through that huge growth stage, and it's been paramount to all of our expansion steps. How do we maintain that? What do we need to do? A lot of it is talking with our teams, having open lines of communication. We are heavily involved in having employees suggest or even just start groups that we do various different nights, whether it's trivia night, Dungeons and Dragon night. We've got areas that people can collaborate on similar likes. So we have a bird group, Pets of Ellis Porter group. So all of it comes down to really being engaged, listening to your teams. We have touch points with our entire remote working population a couple of times a year where we have an open forum and say, let's talk about what challenges are you facing? How can we make you feel more included into Ellis Porter and part of the community, so you're not feeling like you're just stuck in your apartment working on these immigration applications, but what's important to you? From a big scale, at the end of the year, we have all of the Ellis Porter remote employees come into Detroit. We fly them out and their partners out to Detroit and have a couple of days of great fun with everyone, get to meet everyone in person, share some great food and drinks with everyone. Throughout the year, we have smaller in-person events. So we'll have, we've got a large number of employees now in Chicago and North Carolina. and Pittsburgh. So from time to time, we'll have groups of employees fly out to those places, and we'll organize a great dinner or an activity, go to a baseball game, or go to an event there and have everyone come together. And then if you take a level down from that, through social media and other platforms that we have, and we're able to connect on a daily basis about things and share similar interests. So we do all of that stuff, but I think that the key really is our employees. We take great pride in recruitment. We go through multiple levels of recruitment. We really want to make sure that everyone is not only excellent at what they're going to be doing at Ellis Porter, but they're a good person, right? And so we've been really fortunate in our teams that we haven't had somebody that's just rubbed anyone the wrong way. We've had a really inclusive environment where individuals have come in and they've got either cultural, religious, or personal beliefs that they would like to highlight and bring to the attention of everyone. We're really accepting of that, and we welcome them to do that. We encourage them to do that. And so it's created this really amazing environment where I think everyone's just operating really well. And we lent into the remote working lifestyle, and it's worked brilliantly for us.
That's great. I mean, that sounds like all the things we talk with our clients about the culture and how to keep people engaged. So that sounds wonderful. And it's easy to overlook. You get busy, you're growing, going from the numbers you've gone to where you are today. It would be very easy to just say, hey, we're on the growth train, and to kind of forget about those nice things like bringing people together. And so that's wonderful advice. I appreciate that. And that is it for our questions, unless you have anything else you'd like to add to some of the other questions or any other points you'd like to make while we're still recording.
I think just the final point I would say is, as we started off, I think we're going into next year where there is a heightened level of concern and trepidation in some regards regarding immigration. Like I said at the outset, I really would stay off immigration forums. That they can be the worst places to go. I get scared when I go on them, and I'll from time to time just check them out to see what the latest rumors are, because I know what clients are going to tell us. They're scary. A lot of the stories on there are incomplete stories. People say I've never had an immigration issue and they got denied, and they don't tell you that the person that was in front of the officer, was running an illegal operation somewhere. So stay off the forums, stay off the speculation until things get changed. You can adjust, but there's no need to necessarily go over the top now and panic too much. Make substantial changes. Try and push through applications that aren't ready. Speak with your immigration counsel if you have one. And from companies who have existing foreign nationals in the US, what I would say to them is speak with your employees, your foreign national employees. Let them know that you're on top of this, that you're speaking with your immigration counsel, that you've got clear lines of communication. It stops them from panicking too much and spinning out of control. And then also speak with the business leaders. Let them know that there may be challenges to immigration. So if they've got projects coming up over the next year or two that they may need some key members from outside of the US to come and work, figure that out. Let's see, who do you think, what type of employee do you think? Have you earmarked an employee? Are they somebody that would meet the criteria for a specialized knowledge worker, or can you use the next few months to really help bolster their chances of success as an L1? Forward planning for projects, instead of saying, we would normally try to staff the project 2 months before the go live date, maybe you increase that, and maybe it's now 4 to 6 months before the go live date. So those are the things that I think are critical at this point in time, without spiraling out of control and making huge programmatic changes. Mostly talking to your foreign national employee population, the business leaders, and your immigration counsel, just to understand exactly what's happening, and how to demystify the rumors from reality.
That is great advice. I can feel. I'm not even working on a visa right now, but I can feel the calm that you're just like, okay, it's all right. just, don't panic. We just have to do this, this, and this correctly based on the environment. So it's great advice, which I knew it would be. So thanks very much, Arvinder, for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.